the President of the United States, Joe Biden.
Thank you. Please be seated.
President Biden, in a closely watched press conference on Thursday, calmed down some of the most nervous Democrats, but it remains to be seen if he's done enough to save his candidacy. President Biden's performance at the press conference was pretty consistent with what people who watch the president closely would see. He had the same kind of strong moments and weak moments that he has had at sort of multiple press conferences over the last few months. What has changed is the scrutiny on him is much, much more intense.
I'm not in this for my legacy. I'm in this to complete the job I started.
The stakes for this were extremely high for the president. He has been, since the debate, on this sort of cleanup tour, trying to do a number of things to show that he has the mental acuity to continue to run the country.
I beat him once, and I will beat him again.
He had some flubs. Early on, he mixed up Vice President Trump when he meant to say Vice President Harris.
I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, but I think she was not qualified to be president.
The press conference showed him the way he is. You know, he's an 81-year-old man, and, you know, he does have really good moments, and he has a deep knowledge of foreign policy, which was very clearly on display.
So there's a lot of things, in retrospect, I wish I had been able to convince the Israelis to do. But the bottom line is we have a chance now. It's time to end this war. It doesn't mean walk away from going after Sinwar and Hamas.
There are questions about whether or not he would be able to physically do this job in 2 or 3 years. Already, he has said, I'm not as good of a debater that I used to be. I want to shift my schedule so that I'm doing fewer things later at night.
Instead of my every day starting at 7 and going to bed at midnight, it'd be smarter for me to pace myself a little more.
He was a little reflective, I think, and I think that is something that there has been a desire for among Democrats that I've talked to, at least. He was asked at the very end what it would take for him to leave the race.
If your team came back and showed you data that she would fare better against former President Donald Trump, would you reconsider your decision to stay in the race?
No, unless they came back and said, there's no way you can win. Me. No one's saying that.
The Democratic Party going into this press conference is in complete disarray. There have been about a dozen lawmakers at this point, elected members of Congress who are Democrats who've called on President Biden to drop out of the presidential race. Talking to donors who were texting me during the press conference is that there's this like fear that they have when they're watching him that, you know, oh my gosh, is it going to be okay? Are we going to see the debate, sort of the debate version of Joe Biden again, or is he going to get it through it? And there's this like heightened anxiety every time he is talking.
And so our military is working. I'm following the advice of my commander-in-chief, the chief of staff of the military, as well as the Secretary of Defense and our intelligence people.
And that's also playing into the sense of, I don't know, 4 months is really a lifetime in politics. Can we really ride this horse all the way to November? There's a kind of anticipation and anxiety in the White House about whether there's going to be an onslaught of additional Democratic leaders who are going to call on the president to drop out. And if you think of it as a sort of a dam that's about to break, it is leaking. It is a leaky dam. It is a sort of about to break. There is, one theory by people who are close to Biden's advisors, which is that the president really has up till this weekend to make a final decision. And the thing that is going to change, and this is the mind of many of the Biden people and the people close to the Bidens, is that the Republican convention starts on Monday. And for them, they believe that the sort of glare of the media is going to shift away from Joe Biden and onto Donald Trump. And that is really where they want the attention to be.